Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Standing Out, How to Articulate usecure's Value and Differentiate Your MSP Offering. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Hetty Roach, and with us we have Nihil Majaria. He's going to be taking you through the session today. In today's session, we're going to cover how to turn client compliance pains into MSP growth levers, using security and compliance to drive revenue and retention, how to position usecure as a compliance-driven necessity for clients, and how to showcase usecure to highlight real client impact. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Nihil to begin.
Thanks, Hetty. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining today's session. So again, my name is Nihil. I'm the CRO at usecure. So just give a bit of background to myself. My role is basically to make sure that I'm responsible for making sure that we have the processes in place to help our MSPs to commercialize usecure. So as part of that, I've basically spent the last 6 years here speaking with our partners about what offerings they have for their clients, how they're looking to evolve their MSP, and how usecure could help support them in that change. And obviously the different challenges that comes with all those points. So like Hetty mentioned, the purpose of today is all about helping you as an MSP to evolve your offering and make sure that you have nice value add services that help differentiate yourself. So with today's session being all about standing out as an MSP and articulating value, it's important to, I guess, to start and give some context to explain where our insights have come from. Ultimately, they come from working day in, day out with MSPs. MSPs were looking to evolve their offering and make sure that they stand out. The advice that we'll go through during this session is essentially based on the type of challenges that our partners are reporting and the processes that we know work with our partner base. So usecure supports over 350,000 end users globally, and we've partnered with more than 1,500 MSPs. We spend all of our time every day speaking with this base to make sure that we have, again, the right process in place to help you to grow. So our solutions are designed to help MSPs to effectively tackle human-related security risks. The platform is built with partners in mind, and that goes right the way through from helping you to prospect to actually onboard those clients and then actually support and make sure you get the long-term usage out of the product. So we want to use this background to essentially guide our partners, help you with ways in which you can not only articulate our value, but also use this to essentially differentiate yourself more widely. So in order to understand how to articulate that value, we first need to understand what's driving our clients. What are the challenges that modern businesses are facing that are maybe evolving quicker than before, or maybe are becoming more relevant to a wider base of companies, whereas previously it might have been more restricted to those in a certain industry or of a certain size. Compliance is the big topic. Compliance is the absolute key to this. Global standards are evolving incredibly quickly, both in terms of the sheer number of standards. This is a lot that keep being released in different territories, but also the actual requirements within that they're getting a lot more specialized, a lot more in-depth. GDPR was a really big trigger around this around a decade ago, and that has led to things like DORA and NIS2. ISO 27001, I think when I first started, it was mainly seen as something for mid-market or enterprise level companies. Now it's being seen as a standard. These regulations, these compliance bodies, they end up filtering down to become the standard expected across all organizations. And we're seeing that evolution happen now. It goes without saying, compliance can be a real minefield. So the numbers there back that up. 86% of SMBs doubt their own compliance capability without external help. That's essentially a ready-made pool of organizations who have this external way to keep up with, and they're struggling. They would benefit from a helping hand to make sure they're aligned with these different regulatory bodies. It makes complete sense they would then lean into their MSP for that support. 47% of SMBs said they spend too much time on compliance. They essentially feel overwhelmed. People want to spend time growing their organization, on improving their efficiencies, on increasing their revenue. Compliance is this looming shadow that is taking up more and more time, that is detracting from people's ability to spend time on their organization and growing it. So there's a really clear opportunity here to help your clients and, again, differentiate your offering as an MSP. Show your clients that you understand the type of things that they're struggling with and provide them with a solution. If 86% of SMBs feel they need external help, and 47% feel they spend too much time on compliance. It's a no-brainer as an MSP to help provide that external help. Use simple, ready-made solutions that take away that headache and give them that feedback. It's also a really important thing to keep in mind is you don't necessarily need to become a true expert in these different regulatory bodies or legislations to help your clients here. You have a willing audience. It's about providing solutions that will almost like help them on that journey, and that'll be enough to hook them. Obviously, if you have the capacity to learn them on a deep level, that's fantastic, but it's more about making sure that you understand the key components of these different bodies and these different legislations, and then having solutions to help your clients on that path. And the statistics back up that there is, again, that willing audience there and opportunity to differentiate off the back of compliance. If we can understand this pain point as a driver, there's really clear scope for MSPs to evolve their offering and help support your clients in the way in which they need to be supported. Again, this is all about adapting to the current trends and requirements of clients. So again, a few stats here just to illustrate the scope of what we're talking about. So by providing managed compliance services, you can directly increase your monthly recurring revenue by 20 to 50%. That's based on real industry data. It's a really big illustration of the benefit here. Not only are you helping your clients by evolving your offering and sort of adapting to these recent threats, you're justifying that increase in monthly recurring revenue from your clients. It's really difficult to find changes and levers that you can use to boost your revenue by at least a fifth. To have this opportunity with something that is actually externally driven and already being seen as a difficult area for clients is a really great opportunity. It's a really good pool to tap into. Also, research shows that compliance focused MSP clients have significantly fewer security instances. So not only are you helping them to get aligned with different compliance bodies, the actual practical benefit of this is becoming more resilient to cyber instances and then less likely to suffer the associated downtime. That combination of benefit is absolutely massive. Another point which sort of combines, I guess, the increased stickiness and again that word differentiation is there are ultimately there are more MSPs now than ever. There isn't necessarily a barrier to becoming an MSP, and more organizations are leaning on their MSP for support. You, as an established MSP, have the benefit of experience, but newer MSPs have the benefit of being able to look at the security landscape with really fresh eyes and build their offering accordingly. If we've not evolved our messaging for a while or our offering, that then provides a bit of a gap that other partners could potentially use to differentiate themselves. So again, the recurring theme here in this session is on differentiation. How can you evolve your offering to make sure that you keep your clients from looking at another MSP's offering? By moving to compliance as a service, MSPs have a higher retention rate as it essentially shows the client that the MSP isn't standing still. You're adapting to modern requirements and you're leading the evolution. The MSP is leading the client, not being led by the client. It's a really important shift, but it really helps to reinforce the value that you can provide to your clients by showing again that you're adapting to what they're needing. So ultimately, there's a market gap here. Again, less than half of MSPs offer compliance services, despite that growing SMB demand. Again, going back to that stat we talked about on the previous slide about how most of them feel overwhelmed by compliance and know they would need external help. If you're able to plug that gap earlier, you get the advantage as the incumbent MSP. So it's one thing to understand that compliance could be a really key evolution for your MSP. It's another to know exactly how to actually strategically position security and compliance and elevate the value proposition that you have. So we've broken that down into three different points here. The first one being modern MSPs, they're transitioning away from that sort of traditional reactive IT support and instead are moving towards more proactive, compliance and security focused solutions. If you can go beyond that traditional MSP approach of IT maintenance and support and add that extra value through your insights and your ability to keep them aligned with compliance, Again, you're making it easier to grow your monthly recurring revenue and keep those clients on board. So a lot of our partners are moving towards being MSSPs or value add resellers and are looking for a hook to catalyze that change. Compliance can be a really willing and welcome hook for that. A really important element is also to look at offering security and compliance as standard rather than an optional feature. If you're able to do that, it really elevates your marketing positioning. If you make critical elements optional, it essentially tells the client that it isn't critical, that it is something that they can pick and choose, and it actually isn't too important for their business. If you show your clients that compliance and security is a vital, non-negotiable part of modern business, then you'll be able to build a far more compelling case. We see this again with our biggest partners. They often have real clarity in their messaging to tell their clients that, as a modern company, you need to be doing X, Y, Z. You need to be doing security awareness training and simulated phishing. You need to have MFA in place. You need to have firewalls in place, email security. If I'm not providing all of these elements to you, I'm not doing my job as an MSP of making your organization secure. That evolution from going from being a little bit more support led to then being a bit more, I guess, forward forward planning with your offering and sort of mandating certain essential products. I appreciate that can be a really tricky evolution, especially if you're not the most, I guess, commercially confident and are more on the technical side of things. It's really important to remember that you're the expert here as the MSP, and it's ultimately built to help the client. MSPs should position themselves as trusted advisor. Your value as an MSP isn't just around the products that you license. It's around your expertise in helping to take these headaches away from the clients. They have worked with you for this reason, because IT security and compliance now with this new wave can be an absolute minefield. So it's important that you're able to utilize your knowledge and your position in this sort of working relationship to utilize it for everyone's benefit. Make security the standard rather than an optional thing for your clients. And finally, highlighting real risks through client risk assessments and then using compliance as the compelling sales hook is absolutely crucial. Compliance-based selling has the real benefit of being able to point to an external body. It's not me as your MSP saying that you need security awareness training. It's modern best practices, and it's mandated by these different controls in these regulations. So again, it's important to reiterate here that it's really important that as an MSP you have an offering that you yourself actually believe in. If you've identified that NIST 2 or ISO 27001 is really important for your client base, and you've purposely selected vendors that fit into that messaging and that journey, you then have complete confidence that you're providing a service where, again, 86% of SMBs already feel like they need that external support. That then gives you the confidence to be more definitive in your positioning, the value that you're offering, and your differentiation as an MSP. And again, it's also really important to reinforce that we're not expecting partners to become experts in compliance. It's an evolution over time. It's a case of understanding compliance at a good enough level that you can engage in these conversations with your clients. You can include it in some of your messaging to open up the conversation, or have vendors in your stack where you know how they can specifically help and articulate that value to that client so they feel essentially assured, like reassured that they have a thought out offering being presented to them that can help them take that headache away and get them to where they need to be. So, as I sort of alluded to a second ago, it's as you evolve your offering, it's so important to make sure that the vendors that you work with align with the overall plan. The key is to make this easy. Easy for you to license and manage, easy for your clients to understand, to incorporate, and then get that value. At usecure, our aim is to simplify security and compliance. So both of those elements, security and compliance, are notoriously tricky. We've worked really hard to ensure that our offering could be an accessible route, help clients become more secure and in line with compliance requirements. So one of the great things about what we do is human cyber risk is relevant for all companies, and it's referenced in pretty much all security legislation. So again, it's a really good opportunity where if you as an MSP, if you don't feel too confident in leaning too heavily into compliance just yet, but you want to start that evolution, start incorporating it as a hook, usecure is a really good way to test the waters and sort of dip your toe in the compliance route, mainly linking it with things like ISO 27001, NIS2, where it is very explicitly referenced. So you can break usecure down into a 4-step process. I appreciate a lot of you on this session will be existing partners, and this might seem familiar to you. At the same time, it's always useful to just reinforce the core workflow available within the product and how that can be articulated to your clients. So the 4-step process, which we can break it down into, the first one would be to identify. One of the really important things when it comes to end user awareness and security in general is identifying gaps. One of the pitfalls in traditional awareness programs is they don't take the time to understand each person's own gaps. We use a gap analysis questionnaire to figure out each individual user's own weak points. We want to understand where their blind spots are and then tailor the training and the program accordingly. Step 2 is to then train. So use our e-learning and our policy management tool to minimize those gaps that we've just identified. So with the training program, if we know that that client's head of HR is really weak when it comes to social media usage, that will be the first training course that we send them. So it's nice, tailored, targeted training. uPolicy, the document management tool, is a really interesting hook. Again, if you're thinking about how to evolve your usage of usecure and become more compliance-led. Pretty much every regulatory body or element of compliance, they will mandate that certain processes are being followed and that end users are being informed of those processes as well. We know a lot of companies really struggle to get their documentation in place. uPolicy provides that central repository, so we can have a group. A lot of our partners provide a bundle of policies, maybe an email use policy, a password policy, a acceptable use policy. They'll then combine those together and they will send them to every client as a standard policy pack. It's a really easy way to, again, just start getting your clients thinking about compliance and processes. And if we think about auditors, auditors love an organization where it's clear that there is a logical process behind how you're operating. It's not a case of just getting things in place and for the sake of it, just because it's individual benefits to them. It's having a process and a plan that is actually thought out. Having a document management tool like uPolicy is just a great visualization to show that not only are you planning for your clients and you're presenting them with certain processes, you're also getting an audit trail to show that they're opting in. There's a case study that I'll touch on in a few slides that sort of reiterates the importance of that from an auditory perspective. We also want to combine that with verifying their new understanding. So phishing is still the main headline threat. We can send simulated phishing attacks and really understand how individual user responses would be. Again, really good to build the data for your clients and show them individual user risks. And finally, we want to monitor. So we monitor the dark web with uBreach. We know that phishing campaigns are getting more sophisticated. They are becoming a lot more personalized. They're becoming a lot harder to spot. The dark web is a really big part of that. So a lot of us have data out there on us that we're just not aware of. Attackers try to find that information on the dark web based on different breaches you've been part of, and then use that to build a targeted bespoke phishing attack. It's much harder to spot that phishing attack if it's tailored to you as an individual. Again, when we come to adding that value to your clients, it's taking that position as a trusted advisor. They are probably experiencing these more sophisticated phishing attacks, but maybe not understanding why. If their MSP comes to them and says, here's the flow that these attackers are following, and here's how we can mimic that workflow in a safe environment. We can monitor the dark web for you and see what's out there, and we can then send a targeted phishing attack off the back of it. All of a sudden, you're helping to really contextualize a risk they're experiencing in real terms and give them a solution that helps to reduce that risk as well. Again, underpinning this all, again, the fact that usecure is built for MSPs, it's completely automated. You get your reporting off the back of it. The entire program could be set up in 20 minutes and left alone forever. So it's obviously crucial to make sure that when you are presenting security and compliance, it's presented in an effective way. Lean into your position as the industry expert. Ultimately, you're only suggesting solutions that you're confident will help to make that client more secure and more compliant. If the client again feels like it's an optional or a nice to have, it's so difficult to generate that urgency and help them to understand why this is relevant and how it can help them now. So, in order to position it as essential, we need to effectively communicate the problem, and then the solution that we present will then resonate much more strongly. So, just to summarize the problem, again, human error remains the leading cause of data breaches. So that drives the need for employee compliance training. There are mandatory training requirements under standards such as GDPR, ISO 27001, HIPAA if you're in the US, and non-compliance has a really heavy associated cost. We never advocate for fear-based selling, but having an external body that highlights the risk, the fact that this is something which has weight behind it. It's not just being exaggerated for effect by us. It is an actual formalized legislation where there are fines for non-compliance. It then has that detachment to say, look, this is something that we're reacting to based on these bodies, and we're providing these solutions for you. And the solution, so again, usecure makes that client compliance simple. It's automation, cost effective, and hassle free, and that reduces your potential fines and the reputational damage that you might get off the back of that. And again, the idea here is to make it easy. Compliance can be hugely time consuming and a real headache. So again, it's important to find solutions that make this an easy transition and value add, and then communicate that to your client. So again, the messaging there needs to be reinforced and consistent. This doesn't have to mean an entire rebrand for your MSP. Something as simple as LinkedIn posts that link to blogs, or mail shots that talk about compliance, or PDFs that you can attach to your follow-up emails that reinforce how we can help. All of those different touch points just help to build this perception and reinforce your messaging. And we have ready-made resources that are designed to help MSPs with that type of messaging too. Um, Security and compliance can often be quite reactive. People often act when there's an incident or there's an external auditor. In order to become more proactive, real data is absolutely crucial. So again, this slide is all about breaking down how to actually highlight that real business impact. Actual data is the absolute key here. So we have multiple routes which you can utilize to show real client data and demonstrate that organization's risk today. We offer free risk reports, which are a brilliant way to build data really easily. It then becomes much more relevant and real if we can present specific data on that organization. Ultimately, it then helps that client to identify gaps they might not have actually been aware of without that risk report being ran in the first place. Once we've identified that gap, again, usecure then becomes a solution. So human risk management in the form of training and phishing to identify and reduce that risk, policy management automation to make sure that we're having the key processes documented, dark web monitoring, and measurable risk reporting. Finally, it's really important to actually showcase the impact. I think proactive security measures can be really tricky to contextualize with data because ultimately what we're doing is it's an absence of incident that shows that the program is working. To help with that, we provide live risk reporting that collates the data within the program and then gives both an individual user and a company-wide risk score. So that turns reams of data which might lack context into digestible reports that provide an actual visualization of risk and company progress as well. People like to see positive trajectories and trends to help justify how this product is helping them with their internal security. And again, by providing that insight, you're able to continually reinforce value and again, help to make sure that you are retaining that client's business by adding that extra value and differentiating your offering. So as part of that movement towards proactivity, your sales strategy needs to be aligned with your approach and your messaging. We again fully appreciate that not every MSP has dedicated sales teams who can run multi-step outreach programs, and some MSPs are more technically minded than they are commercially. As part of our MSP focus, we've tried to build processes that make it really easy for MSPs to sell our solution. Again, I keep coming back to that. Make it easy. Find vendors that make things simple for you. I think as long as you get these fundamentals in place that are listed, you'll be well placed to generate that client interest, irrespective of your internal size. A really simple thing to incorporate is a free compliance checkup. This doesn't have to be anything overly detailed. It can be a 15-minute session where you run through a checklist that's relevant to maybe a compliance framework that you're aligning with, or a piece of legislation that is relevant to that client. That can be really effective. If you're really struggling for resource, make this a self-assessment for those clients. Send them a questionnaire, get them to fill it out, and if they don't meet a certain threshold, then follow up and use those as like a short list of those that need more help. It's also, again, important to remember that clients are already struggling with compliance. We saw that in those stats earlier. So you have a willing listener to your messaging. If you're able to provide that clear guidance, they're more likely to latch on to your recommendations. Use data to showcase the value relevant to that company. Clearly position usecure as a simple, automated way to meet those compliance needs. People associate compliance with complex, time-consuming processes. If you give them a simple solution, they'll latch onto it. And again, it's important to have that proactive security approach. Shift client focus away from reactive fixes and instead show them the benefits of ongoing proactive management. I just want to briefly touch on a case study from one of our clients, in particular because of that quote from an auditor. So their auditor labeled usecure as the best and most comprehensive human risk management solution they'd seen. It's a real tick. It's a really easy way just to get aligned with certain elements and take that headache away, and then focus on maybe the more complex bits of aligning with what that auditor is looking for. And again, we then have stats that show there is real life data, real life benefit, to actually incorporating the program by reducing, for example, phishing compromise rates. Finally, as part of our work to obviously understand our partners, we've been able to get a really good handle on common client objections. Some of these are probably familiar to you if you've sold our cybersecurity solutions beforehand, or any security solutions previously, particularly if it's around training. The good thing about having these like common objections is that when they do come up, we can be well prepared for them. So I would say the point 2 and 3 of we're too small and it's too expensive, they probably go hand in hand. They ultimately stem from a feeling of an incident won't happen to me. I think a lot of people are becoming quite desensitized to stats, and we all have our own sort of cognitive biases around our own risks. It's easy to think that a cyber awareness program is a medium priority until you have an incident. Once you have that incident, then the cost becomes negligible. The urgency is absolutely there. But obviously, we want to prevent these instances from happening in the first place. So there's a few things that we can do to help overcome those objections, particularly around we're too small or it's too expensive. Firstly, remind your client that we typically read about huge organizations having cyber incidents because they're the most newsworthy. We read about X suffering their cyber attack. We won't read about a 20-person accountancy firm because it's not as obviously as headline grabbing. It doesn't mean these don't happen. It just means that they're less likely to be reported on. If anything, attackers probably know that SMBs are more likely to have this attitude and therefore lack the processes that they might need, and therefore could be an easier target. Another route is to use actual data. So a breach on average costs around $200,000. Could that client afford that? Very few can afford to swallow up that cost. If they can't, then what's the harm in running a free risk assessment and then being able to make an informed decision? If you don't want to go down that route, it's essentially accepting that there is risk that you are willing to not understand, to then make an informed decision off the back of it. So offer them that route. A lot of them will want that insight, and then it gives them more compelling justification to move forward with the product. The other point I want to touch on is the objection of my employees won't engage. In my experience, that's born typically out of poor prior experiences with training in particular. I think we've all done training where it's overly long, it lacks real life scenarios, it feels more like it's just something to get through rather than something that actually resonates with you. We can use this to our advantage. Most clients know they should do more to help their staff. most clients know they could do more around compliance. They just haven't found a solution that they're happy with and that will actually get the right level of engagement. It's similar to the compliance problem. Like, we have a client pool where most people are aware of the problem. We just need to ensure that we can provide a compelling solution. So again, by aligning more closely with compliance, by reinforcing yourself as a trusted advisor, as an MSP that understands the market, understands recent trends, and understands recent challenges, and if you can provide solutions that help to take that headache away from them, it's a really easy and relatively quick way to differentiate your offering as an MSP and make sure that client retains their business with you and understands that the value of, almost purchasing more, going for a more comprehensive stack that you might offer. Maybe again going back to that standardized offering, and ultimately the end result is they become more in line with compliance and less likely to get hit with a cyber incident. So that's everything from me. I'll just hand back over to Hetty to go over the next steps.
Thanks, Neil. That was great. Yeah, just touching upon a couple of next steps. If you are already a usecure partner, then please do feel free to reach out to your account manager today for any additional support, or if you have any questions about anything. And if you aren't yet a usecure partner, then please feel free to contact us and grab a free NFR license. So thank you everyone for joining, and we hope you have a great day.